$1,240. That's the number staring back at you the morning you turn 34. Checking account, not savings. The account that's meant to stretch until the next paycheck already looks worn thin before the month's even halfway done. You know it's bad before the app even finishes loading because your chest has done this exact clench before. It's a Saturday night. You're on the couch, laptop resting on your knees, some show playing in the background that you stopped following 20 minutes ago. Your partner's already asleep down the hall, and you're doing the thing you do every couple of months, telling yourself you'll just peek at one account balance. Somehow you end up 4 tabs deep across everything you own. Your salary is $74,500 a year. That's $6,208 a month before the government takes its cut, and $4,510 once it does. Rent eats $1,650. Car payment, $385. Insurance, $210. Credit card minimum, $150. Groceries, $480. A yoga studio membership you haven't stepped into in 5 months, $50. Some forgotten subscription bundle, $42. Add it up and you should have $1,543 left over. But your statement says you spent $1,638 in a category your bank just calls miscellaneous. You've been quietly losing $95 a month for over a year, and you never noticed because $95 doesn't register as anything. It feels like a rideshare here, a late-night order there, a free trial you forgot to cancel. It was never one bad decision. It was 30 small ones wearing a disguise. You keep scrolling further back than you planned to. 6 months, then 10, then 15. You start circling charges you can't place. A $12.99 line from an app you opened once and never again. A $19 late fee on a bill you were certain you'd paid. A recurring $7.49 charge with a merchant name that means nothing to you, no matter how long you squint at it. None of it is dramatic. That's what makes it so hard to sit with. There's no villain here. Just 15 months of not paying close enough attention and the quiet math of what that costs, compounding the whole time in the background. You shut the laptop. You sit there in the dim glow of the pause screen and something in you settles into stillness. Not panic, just quiet. The kind that shows up right before a decision you've been dodging for years finally lands. Here's the thing. Nobody says plainly about starting at 34. You're not too late, but you're not early either. And pretending otherwise burns time you don't actually have to burn. Someone who started at 23 has 11 years of compounding you will never claim back. That's not pessimism, that's arithmetic. Sit with the loss for a night if you need to. Then get moving. Because staying stuck at this same number for another 10 years costs you far more than the 11 years already spent. Here's what's also true. You're 34. You've got over a decade of work experience under you. You know how negotiations go. You understand how systems bend. You're not learning to crawl while everyone else sprints. You're just starting further back on the same track, and the track is longer than most people admit. Put $700 a month into the market starting now, average an 8% return, and you land around $1.1 million by 65. That figure isn't there to inspire you. It's just math, sitting quietly under every choice from here forward, whether you look at it or not. But $700 a month means something has to give first. It means hunting down the $95 leak and shutting it. It means finally looking straight at a $3,800 credit card balance sitting at 24% interest instead of glancing past it. It means deciding, actually deciding, that the you at 50 outweighs the you ordering delivery 4 nights a week right now. The first target isn't retirement. It isn't even a full emergency fund yet. It's just $1,800 sitting untouched in savings. Saying that number out loud at 34 feels almost embarrassing in its smallness. And that embarrassment is exactly why most people never say it out loud at all. They'd rather look further along than admit they're only now starting the real work. You cancel the yoga membership, $50 back. You call your insurance company, sit through a 25-minute hold, and switch providers, $28 a month saved. You sell the mountain bike that's been leaning in the garage since last spring, $275. You start meal prepping 3 nights a week instead of ordering out, roughly $140 a month back in your pocket. One Wednesday morning, you check the account, $1,890. You don't celebrate. Nobody's around to tell, and even if they were, How do you explain that $1,890 feels bigger than the number itself? But something in your chest loosens a notch. Small, specific proof that direction can actually shift. At 35, you've automated $450 a month into a Roth IRA and $220 into a high-yield savings account. The money's gone before you can talk yourself out of moving it. You live on what's left. Some months it's tight. It holds anyway. Then the furnace dies. You hear it before you understand it. A low hum sliding into a rattle on a Thursday morning in October. The technician quotes $1,450 for a full replacement. 2 years back, this goes straight onto the card and sits there for months, compounding at 24%. This time you pull it from savings. You watch the balance drop and feel your stomach tighten a little as the number falls. But you don't slide backward. You rebuild the cushion over the next 4 months, one automatic transfer at a time. Somewhere in the middle of that year, you finally sit down and actually read your 401k statement. Not skim it, read it. For the first time in 4 years. You find a fund quietly charging 1.05% in fees annually. Small enough to ignore on the page, until you run it forward 30 years and realize it's set to cost you roughly $81,000 by retirement. Nobody stole it. You just never looked closely enough to catch it leaving. You spend a Sunday afternoon on hold, then another hour squinting at prospectuses you don't fully follow, and you move everything into an index fund charging 0.03%. Nothing visibly changes that day. No one claps. But $81,000 just quietly stayed in your future instead of funding someone else's fee line. At 36, something shifts that has nothing to do with a bank balance. You're in a hardware store on a Saturday, choosing between 2 pairs of work boots, one at $52, the other at $128 with an 8-year warranty and real ankle support. 5 years ago, you'd have grabbed the cheap pair without thinking twice. Instead, you stand there running cost per wear over the next decade, and you buy the $128 pair. Sitting in your car after, you notice you're thinking in years now, not in days until payday. Nobody taught you that. It just grew in quietly while you weren't watching for it. At 37, your company sends a layoff announcement on a Tuesday afternoon, dressed up in the word right-sizing. By 4 p.m., the office has gone quiet in that specific way. That means everyone's messaging someone privately. You go home and run your numbers. Savings covers 3.5 months at your current burn rate. Your investments sit there, untouched, a backstop if things get worse. You're not untouchable, but you're not one missed paycheck from disaster the way you were at 31. The cuts land 10 days later. 11 people. You keep your seat, but 2 coworkers you used to grab lunch with weekly do not. Relief and guilt arrive together, and underneath both, a colder clarity. This will happen again, to you or to someone close to you, and the only real insurance is time bought by a number sitting in an account. You push your emergency target from 3.5 months to 6. You don't dip into the investments to get there. At 38, your friend Marcus leases a BMW. He doesn't call it a lease. He calls it practically owning it and moves the conversation along fast. By now you've run enough of this math to know what $760 a month for 5 years actually adds up to. You have a rough sense of what Marcus makes, too, and those 2 numbers sitting side by side tell a story he hasn't let himself read yet. You're in the passenger seat once and feel the pull of it, the hush inside the cabin, the door shutting with that engineered heaviness. A voice in you says, "You've held the line for years now. Don't you deserve this?" You notice the voice. You don't fight it or shame yourself for having it. You just let it pass, the way you'd let a passing storm pass, because you've learned to tell the difference between wanting something and wanting it on a payment plan. The real question was never desire. It's what desire costs you in years. $760 a month for 60 months is $45,600 for a car worth half that the day the payments stop. You drive home in your 8-year-old Civic and feel something that takes a beat to name. Not envy, something closer to clarity about exactly what you're doing and why. At 39, a promotion lands that you didn't fully see coming, and your salary jumps from $92,000 to $118,000. This is the quiet hinge point that decides whether the last 5 years actually meant anything. Because here's what almost happens. The second that new number hits your account, your brain starts window shopping a bigger apartment, a nicer car, a life that finally matches the title on your new badge. You catch yourself mid-search on a listing. $2,150 a month for an extra bedroom you'd use twice a year, for guests who'd visit twice a year. You close the tab. Instead, you bump your 401k contribution by the exact percentage your raise represents, and that money never sits in your checking account long enough for you to miss it. From the outside, your life looks nearly identical to last year's. Internally, you just pulled your whole timeline forward by roughly 4 years, and nobody watching could tell. Your portfolio crosses $55,000 on a Tuesday in April. You check the app between meetings out of habit now, not anxiety, and it reads $56,700. You go back to your meeting. You eat lunch at your desk. But the number sits with you all day, quiet and warm. It's the first milestone that feels like a foundation curing rather than a symbol. At 40, your father calls on a Sunday evening, careful and rehearsed, the way people sound when they've practiced the ask for days. The roof needs replacing, $2,900. He's been sitting on it because he doesn't know how to bring it up. You tell him not to worry. You wire the money the next afternoon without touching the portfolio, without opening a credit line, without losing sleep over it. What stays with you isn't the $2,900. It's the sentence you said without a beat of hesitation, "I've got it." 5 years earlier, that sentence would have meant a private calculation of which card to use and how many months it'd take to dig out, plus a quiet shame about not being able to absorb a family emergency cleanly. This time, you just helped. More than any account balance, that's the moment you understand what any of this was ever for. Not a number. Capacity. The ability to say yes to people you love without it knocking you off your feet. That same year, you and your partner finally sit down and merge your finances after 5 years together. It's less romantic than it sounds. A Wednesday night at the kitchen table, 2 laptops open. You learn she's been carrying $9,500 in credit card debt she never gave you the exact figure on. She learns you've quietly been paying down a $1,800 personal loan from a mattress set you bought 3 years ago and never mentioned because it embarrassed you. There's a version of that night that turns into a fight. It almost does, for about 3 minutes. Instead, you both go quiet, then start building a shared spreadsheet, tab by tab, the way you built your own years back. You combine emergency funds into one account, $7,600 total. You agree on $350 a month toward her balance until it's gone. You both stop hiding purchases from each other, not because either of you demanded it, but because the hiding had quietly cost more than the money ever did. 15 months later, the debt's gone. You didn't get there alone. Money built alongside another person stops being a private spreadsheet and becomes a shared language, and learning to speak it without shame took longer than paying off the debt itself. At 41, your portfolio throws off $6,900 in a single year from growth alone. No new money added. Just the machine running on its own while you sleep, while you're sick, while you forget to open the app for 2 weeks straight. You built this one transfer at a time through a broken furnace, a layoff scare, a kitchen table conversation that could have gone sideways and didn't, a market dip, and a phone call from your father that once would have wrecked your whole month. By 42, the credit card is paid off entirely. A balance that trailed you since your mid-20s disappears in one transfer that feels both massive and strangely quiet, the way real milestones usually do. You're sitting on a diversified portfolio, a maxed Roth IRA, a small taxable brokerage account. And here's the part nobody says out loud. You feel a specific kind of isolation at dinner with old friends. Some are in real financial trouble that's hard to watch up close. Some out-earn you and spend every dollar of it without appearing to notice. Some have made an uneasy peace with a retirement plan built on hope and vague trust in Social Security. You've gently brought it up twice. Neither time landed. People don't rework their relationship with money because someone mentioned index funds over dinner. They rework it alone, at their own kitchen table, at 1 a.m., staring at a spreadsheet that finally got too uncomfortable to keep ignoring, the way you did. You can't manufacture that moment for anyone else. So you carry the gap quietly. You split the check evenly, even when you ordered less. You don't wear discipline like a personality. You just quietly close a window nobody else can see. At 43, your son is born on a Wednesday in early June, 7 years after that first kitchen table spreadsheet with your partner. 2 weeks later, running on almost no sleep, you open a $529 account for him before his nursery furniture is even fully assembled. $130 a month, automated, the same way everything else is run on autopilot for years now. You do the math without meaning to, the way you now do math about everything. Keep contributing $130 a month for 18 years at a 7% return, and he'll have roughly $56,000 waiting for him before he's old enough to understand what it means. You're not handing him a life he didn't earn. You're handing him a starting line further ahead than $1,240 in a checking account and a decade of playing catch-up. You're trying to give him the 11 years you never got. You rock him at 3 a.m. some nights and think about the version of you at 34, sitting on that couch, treating a $95 leak like it might save your life. In a way, it did. Not because $95 was ever really the point, but because that Saturday was the night you stopped being someone things simply happened to. You wake up on your 45th birthday before your alarm, before your phone. You lie there in the dark and think about the couch, the pause screen, the $1,240, the $95 leak you nearly never found. Then you check the number, $290,000. Not financially free by any measure the internet likes to throw around, but 45 years old with $290,000 in real, working, liquid wealth, built from a decade late start, built out of a credit card sitting at 24% interest, built out of one honest Saturday when you finally stopped looking away. The median 45-year-old in this country has a net worth well under half of that. You didn't inherit it. There's no stroke of luck that explains it. You just started, then automated the behavior before the motivation ever fully showed up. And you kept going through every moment that would have justified quitting. 9 years ago, you thought this would feel like a number. It didn't. It felt like covering a furnace repair without your stomach dropping. It felt like getting through a round of layoffs without falling apart. It felt like telling your father, "I've got it," and meaning every syllable. Most of all, it felt like waking up one ordinary morning and realizing the future had quietly stopped being something that happened to you and had become something you were still building, one transfer at a time.